Do what you love and the money will come. I can tell you from personal experience that I and a bunch of my friends have all been doing that for a very long time, and it's not necessarily true. Building a business around your passion seems like so much fun, doesn't it? Yes, making art is fun. I love doing it. Trying to build a business around it? Not always so much. Yes, you can absolutely 100% make great money from your art, but unless you are working within a very specific niche that people just feel like they have to have, there's a strong possibility that you will not kill it. And when you don't kill it, you might end up killing your passion for that work. The anxiety, the stress, the need to have some sort of validation for the work that you've poured out of your body. You take your heart and your soul and you throw it down into the work that you've created, and people don't validate that. That'll wreck your passion in a heartbeat, obviously, because your heart just came out of your chest and onto the work. That's why do what you love is terrible advice. Instead, what we're going to work on is what I call the passion adjacent. Now, this idea came to me while I was researching information about the project that I started last week. We talked about building up a print-on-demand business. I got to thinking about it as like, is this going to feel genuine to me? Because the truth is that it's not going to be anything closely related to the artwork that I do, at least the artwork that I'm doing right now. So the idea of passion adjacent is that we're not trying to capitalize on the thing that we love, but instead trying to capitalize on something that lives next to the thing that we love. It's like the next door neighbor of our passion.
Good morning!
Morning! Good morning!
Maybe it's across the street from our passion. We live in the neighborhood, we love our passionate neighbor, and we go over there often, but it's not where we live. We live over here in this world where we've got to work and not necessarily relate ourselves to that every single day. We definitely go by, we hang out, we chat, and then we go back home and get to work on the thing that feels good still, but isn't necessarily that thing. Now, if you're kind of new here, you don't really know much about me. Well, my name's Dave, and I make things like this. This is one of my art projects. I also make design-oriented projects where I make posters and I make merchandise. And that stuff is great, and it's fun, and I love making it, but it doesn't always sell off the shelves, you know what I mean? Brings me tons of joy. Not exactly tons of revenue. I want to put a little sidebar in here because there are plenty of people up on this platform that say, hey, you can make money from your art. But what they fail to recognize or what they fail to acknowledge is that sometimes the thing that they have done to make the money isn't necessarily the thing that we are doing. You can absolutely go paint pictures of unicorns and rainbows and cats and landscapes and portraits of famous people, whatever it is that you do, and that thing is doing well for you, but it's not what I do. And so your success story doesn't necessarily apply to mine. And I'm putting that out there because what I'm talking about is all related to my personal experience, and it may not necessarily directly relate to you, although I do believe a lot of this does apply to most people. Not everybody, but possibly you. That being said, I do recognize that this work requires a little bit more trust in my potential buyers than, say, me just painting pictures of unicorns and cats and rainbows and whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with selling pictures of cats and rainbows and unicorns. Go get down with your bad self. But when somebody sees this thing up for sale and then a picture of a cat, a unicorn, or a rainbow, this one takes a little bit more leap of faith to say, yes, I definitely want that on my wall. Some people might be passionate enough to figure, hey, that's it, and those are my best collectors, those are my favorite people, but I can't possibly expect everybody to feel that way. At least not yet. Instead, we're going to focus on our passion adjacent thing, which helps us fulfill that creative need we have and definitely makes us feel good because of the work that we're creating, but doesn't have a direct correlation or doesn't necessarily have to have a direct correlation with the other thing that we're making. And it'll be this part of the conversation where some people will say, well, Dave, isn't that like selling out because you're not being true to yourself? You're not doing the thing that you absolutely said you wanted to do, and now you're doing this other thing just to make money? No, it's not that at all. To me, selling out is trying to capitalize on some sort of popular thing that if you were to go down that path, doesn't bring you any kind of joy. It makes you feel almost bad for doing it, but you're just like, well, I'm going to do it because it's popular and I can possibly sell a bunch of stuff. A few years back, I read a book called So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. Technically, I didn't actually read it. I actually listened to it because it was an audiobook, so I don't have the book to share with you. Actually, hold on. So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. cover design by me. And in this book is, well, actually nothing. It's just a sketchbook, so... The premise of the book is that in order to really gain notoriety, fame, success, revenue, is to be so good that other people cannot ignore you because you just like so in their face, the person of authority, the person that everybody is aware of. Within the book, there are several case studies of people who got successful not because they chased after their passion, but because they got different bits of information, knowledge, experience along the way that made them grow into territory that may not necessarily be their passion area, but it allowed them to grow and at least touch base with some of that so that they could then transfer whatever they had left over to their passion project. Or they gained so much awareness that people started to inquire about the passion project after the fact. Or they got so rich and famous about it that they basically said, I'm done with this, let's go paint for a living. The most notable case study within the book is actually about Steve Jobs and how he came to be who he was. You would think like, oh, he would chased after technology and became this guy that was like the technological whiz kid, and that really wasn't the case. He was actually more interested in all types of different things, a lot of creative pursuits actually. Didn't really have much interest in the nuance of technology, but really just understood the power of it. But the little things that he learned along the way got him to a position where he created an opportunity where there hadn't been one before. And he did so because of things like, well, he took a calligraphy class when he was in college. Going from a calligraphy class over to technology doesn't seem very congruous. It doesn't seem like a straight path, and of course it probably wasn't. But that calligraphy class helped him better understand typography, which helped him better understand what he was going to release when the first Macintosh came out, which then became the working machine of record for anybody in graphic design at the time. He had all these creative interests, but he understood that those creative interests weren't necessarily going to get him to the success level that he wanted to achieve. He did understand that the technology that was happening was definitely something to latch onto, and then he just integrated his creative aspects into that thing. Not to be too dismissive over Steve Jobs' accomplishments, but Apple really was his passion-adjacent project. And ultimately, it probably ended up becoming his main passion, because I can't imagine that Steve Jobs would go home at night and then just practice calligraphy. Hey, I don't know. Maybe he did. On a story a little bit closer to home, I have a good friend here in town. Her name is Stephanie Hahn. She is also a designer like me and an accomplished artist. I've known Stephanie for a very long time, and I've seen the progress of her work go along. And one of the things that I've noticed about the work that she's doing now is it feels a little bit adjacent to some of the work she's done in the past. I had a conversation with her about this because I wanted to make sure I wasn't speaking out of turn, but she noted all the ways that her work has changed over time, and that the work that she's doing right now, which just happens to be about cats, by the way, is a little bit passion adjacent. She's still making art, but she's making art on a topic that, number one, she cares about, number two, is easy for her to execute on and allows her to expand the realm of the capability of her future work. Will she continue to paint cats for the rest of her life? I don't know, maybe she might. What's happening right now is people are gaining a lot of interest in her work because of all those folks who, number one, recognize that she's a talented artist, and number two, recognize that cats are awesome, at least if you're a cat lover. Potentially could happen for Stephanie is that, number one, she gains more authority as being the person that makes cats or paints cats and does them in a unique way, not just regular old kitschy cat portraits. She does them kind of interesting and cool. She also could gain a lot more awareness for all these people who might not necessarily go seeking out her art until now because they're cat lovers. And that has the potential to grow her business in a particular direction. And at some point, if she decides to jettison herself from the cats and over to something else, some of those people are going to follow her over, and she's also going to be more successful over there because they trust her because of everything she's done. The general idea is to find a passion adjacent project, and it's something that should give you joy, or at least give you the impetus to create, not make you feel angsty about it because you're like, I'm doing it because it's cool, but I don't know if I like it. You don't want that. You want something that's going to say, like, I enjoy what I'm doing. Produce the work, share it, put it out there in a way that gets to the people that you intend to see it. That will get you more authority because people start to understand, oh, this person is doing this thing over here, and I relate to that thing, so I'm going to continue watching because I like what they're doing. All things going the way that we hope they will, then that awareness eventually grows and your revenue starts to increase over time because of all the people that you've started to attract. As your revenue grows, you can take that and spend it on your passion project, or you can just kind of add to your business over here in the passion adjacent project until it grows to be an international conglomerate and you take over the world. Here's the thing that most people get wrong. They start a project like this And then they just share their work and share their work and share their work and share their work. And they just assume that because they're sharing their art, that people are just automatically just going to clamor to them and buy everything. And then when people don't do that, they get upset and they whine. Why doesn't anybody appreciate me for my talent? Because you didn't give them anything other than pictures on Instagram. Make the thing, provide the value, gain the authority, gain the awareness, get the dollar bills. Now the thing is, this is all theory because this is actually untested, at least from the aspect of this print-on-demand project that I'm building right now. This is all an experiment. The niche that I've chosen is actually something that's a little bit unfamiliar territory for me, but that doesn't mean that I won't be any good at it. I know that I can design work that fits that particular niche. It's something that I have a reasonable interest in, but it's not something that I live in daily. It's not my passion, it's next door to the passion. As long as I'm finding joy in whatever it is I'm creating, I know that I'm gonna be okay with continuing to make that. Especially once the money starts rolling in, because then I'm gonna be like, this was a dang good idea. Fingers crossed. Now, if you plan on following along, at least with my journey, maybe go do your own thing, there's a very important note that I need to make right here. This is incredibly, essentially important. Do not miss this point. My niche must be accepting of the style that I want to work in. I have an idea in my head about how I want this to work, but if that style doesn't fit the niche, then the people in the niche are not going to be able to relate. On the other side of that, if I pick this niche and decide to work in a style that isn't mine, I'm not going to be too interested to continue. So I've got to find this sweet spot between niche and style and figure out what that means and how it works for me. Now, niche, style, and identity are all things I'm going to be going into more detail very, very soon. And if you have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about with this project, well, then you're going to want to watch this one right here. That will tell you everything you need to know. Do me a favor, if you enjoyed this, go down and hit the like button, because that would really help me grow. You guys have been so amazing with all the other videos that I put out recently. I really appreciate it, but this one is important too. So hit that like button, okay? Thanks very much. I've been Dave. You've been awesome. I'll see you next time.